Hey everyone, welcome to Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. I'm Tracy Friedlander, and this is the season 2 finale episode for the podcast. After going nonstop for nearly 2 years, I can't believe it'll already be 2 years in October. I decided I want to create seasons in this podcast. So this episode will wrap up season 2 of Crushing Classical. I'm working now on season 3 and creating some new things that'll change it up a bit. You'll see soon, so follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Crushing Classical for updates on upcoming episodes, which will be launching in September. As I roll out the changes and get it all together, I will definitely put it in my Instagram stories, so make sure you watch. And today on the show, we have Alecia Loyer, oboist and founder of ROCO Chamber Orchestra in Houston, Texas. I had Alecia on today to talk about the groundbreaking things she is doing in the orchestra she founded. One of the biggest takeaways you'll get from this episode is how she is making strides and setting an example in the classical world as an orchestra that's a great place to work and an integral part in the community. You'll hear all her ideas and how she implemented them in her orchestra on the show today. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Fix Music for being a sponsor of Crushing Classical Podcast. FixMusic.com is your online resource for high-quality sheet music at great prices. Check out their latest offerings like hard-to-get music and frequently backordered parts. Fix also offers unique solutions for teachers and schools buying music. Whether you have a large private teaching studio or you run a music program, Fix has a solution for you. Contact them through their website for more information. Fix now offers free shipping on all domestic orders. And remember to use the special discount link in the show notes and get 10% off your order. And check out Drone Tuner, the revolutionary, beautiful new tuner app for iOS in the Apple App Store. Tune to real instrument sounds instead of that wonky mechanical tone and enjoy gorgeous visuals at the same time. Out now for iPad and iPhone, take Drone Tuner everywhere with you. And here's a great tip. Use Drone Tuner with your earbuds at a gig when everybody is blasting loudly warming up. Get a rich, beautiful, in-tune tone in your ear and get centered before the gig starts. Check out video tutorials at dronetunerapp.com and purchase it in the App Store. Let's get started. Welcome to Crushing Classical. Hi, Alecia. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Great. Today we have Alecia Loyer on the show, and I am so grateful that you reached out to me and told me that you run your own orchestra that you started called ROCO, right? Is that what you call it? ROCO?
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. And when you reached out, I was like, okay, you're exactly the type of person I like to have on the podcast,
Thanks.
especially because this is what thrills me the most. People starting their own thing, and I'm getting ready to do the same thing. And so I'm like, goody, I get to find out all that went into this project. So thanks so much for coming on. So before we dive into the whole story of how you started your own orchestra, tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, where you came from, what instrument you play, and all of that good background information.
Oh, wow. I play the oboe, and I started in fourth grade because my dad was band director and my mom's choir director, and just music was a big piece of my life. And I really was not intending to be an oboist or a musician, but I wound up majoring in it. I double majored in physics and oboe actually, and then dropped the physics after a while, and wound up I kind of accidentally auditioning at Juilliard and wound up there for my master's. And
Wait, how do you accidentally
yeah,
audition at Juilliard?
just well, it's kind of a long story, but we were. I went up to audition at another school in Manhattan, and while I was there, I toured New York and saw the school, and I was just very green and didn't know anything, and was like, "Oh, that's a good school." And when I went in, it was kind of a moment of, "Hey, I'd like to audition for your school," and it just so happened somebody had canceled an audition time right when I could do it, and yeah, it was crazy. So it
And
was very weird.
so you ended up going to Juilliard?
For my master's. Yeah. And then my husband and I went to Houston for oil and gas for his job. And then we went abroad for a while and then came back. So there's a big story there on how music changes from you just being driven to audition for people who die in orchestras and then
Yeah.
to actually crafting something that is really community specific, but fully professional.
Yeah, I want to find out about that. So, So essentially you were on the audition path then? I assume like most
back in the
people
day.
are, right? Especially if you go to
Yeah.
Juilliard. So,
Yeah, I think that sometimes in conservatories you just have a mentality of you have to get a job and win a
hmm
job, even if there are no jobs,
right.
to be considered successful. And it's a very narrow path, and uh, unapologetically so. But at the same time, it's like it doesn't necessarily serve the music, and so I think that's where it changes. I mean, you can keep gunning for that job, but then you really can't make a life for yourself in a town, or in a place that you want to live. And so when you actually start having a great life otherwise than oboe, then oboe seems very separate, or the instrument seems very separate from your normal life. So that was really strange to me. It's
I
not
had the
feeling
exact same
like it.
experience. Like you're like, especially I feel like as a woman, I'm sure men get the same experience similar to it. Like you don't really get to decide where you live necessarily, but especially for starting a family, I felt like, well, gee, am I allowed to? Am I allowed
Right.
to, do that yet? Or do I need to just
Yeah.
stay totally focused on getting that job first? And everything always felt like temporary.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
so when did you realize that you didn't want to keep going for the auditions and staying on the job path? Um,
After we lived in France,
okay.
when we moved abroad, which was funny because my teachers all told me not to move to France or it will ruin your life, which to me was the first absurd thing I heard in our world. And I'm like, that's something everyone wants to do.
Yeah.
And it is true. I mean, there's a very different oboe world over there, and your sound and your style can change. But what really changed for me was just realizing that music was a part of people's lives over there. It's a fabric of their lives. It's interwoven. You play after dinner while you've been drinking with professionals and amateurs, um, and it's just a part of your life. And there's, I don't know, it changed everything about what I thought. And when I came back, I did a couple of auditions, but my heart wasn't in it. And when I first came back, actually, I wanted to start. We came straight back to Houston. I wanted to start a salon orchestra that played in homes, but not background music. So it really would not have flown very well back then. And there were a couple of startups that had started, and I was a part of, and I played for them, and it was in administration, personnel managing. And then, I've been a part of three of them, and I was kind of ready to to be perfectly honest, to quit. I was ready to do something else because I felt like, why did I go to Juilliard? But I love Houston. I love my life. I've got kids, and it's just a great city. And, and then my church renovated this space that's this great Frank Lloyd Wright style building. And when I realized that, it was like a big voice from above, start an orchestra. So it was kind of a Noah moment, but it was really great. It was a lot of fun to kind of go, okay, well, why not? Why not try this?
So
So,
by when you said startups, you mean like other people who started other
mhm,
small orchestras in the Houston
right.
area? And so did they ask you
Yeah.
to help them build it, or did they ask you to play oboe in them?
Right, exactly. So the very first one, because I had talked to the union when I first came back from France about starting this salon idea, this guy's like, well, hey, actually, there's an orchestra forming. You should go talk to this conductor. And so I auditioned for him, and then he hired me as principal oboe and personnel manager. And so I was there for 4 or 5 years. And kind of in tandem, there were two other orchestras that started up. And they each had their own really, really great ideas, but didn't quite have the package, to be honest. Either one couldn't raise a lot of money and didn't have a lot of repertoire ideas, something really interesting. But I really did feel like I got so much information from them, so many interesting ideas. At the same time, it was kind of like I was, like you're saying, just playing in it and not really running it, and not getting to choose the rep, not getting to choose anything. So
Okay, so they invited you to play, but also sort of wanted your help. But was
yeah.
there a leadership issue maybe, or what really caused it to fall apart? I don't want to focus on the negative, but I suppose like it's good to know maybe for people who are thinking of starting something, like what didn't work about those that ended up not ultimately causing it to.
Well, I think one of them just didn't have would have concerts, but just concerts, not a real purpose behind the concerts. And the other one would not really pay well, or not even really focus on trying to pay or have any kind of goal of that. And then, um, and just another one just was kind of random. It was like, let's do a concert here. Okay, well now here. I mean, one of them had a really great ideas about performing in unusual places and for unusual ideas. but went pretty far to the point where the music became background music and
Mm.
not a concert. And so it was just great. I mean, I was perfectly prepared to start an orchestra, which I didn't know at the time. I was kind of sad, but just having seen it done that many different ways for some really great ideas.
Yeah, it sounds like there were some good ideas, and then they ran into situations where they probably didn't realize, oh, if we go too crazy with the venue, it's not going to be the focal point, or
Right.
just different things to notice during the process. So that sounds like a really great learning experience. So then you said, so then why did you say I'm gonna start an orchestra? I know your church renovated, so it felt like a no-brainer or something. You had a really great venue, but it's so hard to start something. What stopped you from just saying, I'm just a freelancer in Houston. I'm gonna try to get in with all the orchestras. I'm gonna try to get in with the Houston Symphony. I'm gonna try to do the ballet, the opera, da da da, and create that kind of like portfolio career that people talk about. What stopped you from doing that?
I had been, in the finals for one of the jobs in the symphony, so I was subbing, but it was, you're not, I mean, in a job like that, you're getting hired for, you're really having no influence on what gets played, where you play, what the collaboration is. And I was so much more interested in that at that
Mm,
point. I didn't want to play where people said to play. And there were just a lot of, I mean, you unless you win the job, you're subbing second in children's concerts. It's
yeah.
not artistically satisfying. And we have good freelance scene here, but I mean, it's still opera and ballet are also full-time locked in
Hmm.
positions too. So I don't know. I was just kind of really wanting something a lot more innovative and entrepreneurial. And having been a part of those three other groups, I was like, just seeing it from the other side, it was just so much more interesting to me. Houston is a very diverse city. It's the most diverse actually in the country. And it was just kind of a no-brainer. But the other biggest issue here in Houston is there really aren't very many music venues for
Mm,
classical music. So to have actually found a place that had great acoustics, that's really what spurred it. That was one of the biggest issues all three groups had, is finding a great place to play that was well supported. And so that's the reason when I had a venue, I was like, what? And a perfect size, 600 seats, 500 seats. So yeah, it was great just to focus on the acoustic side of it.
yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
So, what was your first step once you realized, okay, I'm doing this, I'm starting this thing? What did you start doing first?
I actually filed for 501c3. I got my 501c3 immediately. I got my husband to help me write a business plan, submitted it to the church to ask for the space. And then I went to the union because I'd been on the other side as personnel manager and really wanted to do it the right way. And told them that, I was going to start with full out union wage. I wasn't going to try to do a CBA and undercut it and just say, hey, we're going to have to get $40,000 for the first concert or we're not doing it. And
What's a
it's funny,
CBA?
a collective bargaining agreement where
Oh,
a lot of when you start up, you can use those to just say, okay, well, I'm starting an orchestra. I can't pay full union wage right now because I'm just starting out. So you kind of negotiate with the union. But I'd seen it done so many times and the union guys here are such good friends. And I was like, you know what? We should just full out do it. So you just have to declare. It's funny when you tell people what it actually costs, they step up. That's one of my biggest pet peeves is either not paying musicians or not paying them right. Um, so yeah, just kind of start out from that get go and just knowing what you got to pay. So
yeah.
that was the biggest issue. So the first step was that.
Awesome. Right. So paying people their fair what they deserve. I mean, that's so great that you kept that in mind because you were on the other side as a musician going, oh, I really want to be part of a new orchestra, but do I have to suffer the fact that they didn't raise enough money and now I
Right.
get, and I think musicians generally want to help and they want things to happen, but you can't take advantage of that. So I think it's really awesome that you went for it. So how did you figure out the exact budget? Like, did you just sit down and go? I
Yeah.
mean, I know this is kind of nitty gritty, but like, how did you figure what kind of things did you figure in besides the obvious ones like the fee for each musician and all of that? How did you go about that?
Well, I mean, at that point, it was just me. So I didn't have any staff to pay. And just really the venue was giving us their space and some hard costs and printing programs and printing things like that. So really, it was not a big budget at that point, at least line item wise. So really, it was just how many rehearsals and how can I get people around? And then I always talk about ROCO, half the musicians are from all over. So there were people, when I started thinking about this orchestra, I was thinking about who do I want to play with, not why are we starting an orchestra? Let's hire whoever. It's got to be the right people to show what classical music can be. And so it really wound up being all the people I'd gone to Juilliard with or festivals with that could smile on stage and take great joy in what they do and get past themselves on stage, which is rare in classical music. And it didn't matter where they were. There were a few more people here at the first time I started it, but they've since moved because, there's no real full-time jobs here other than the symphony and the opera. So it's been an interesting ride, but it's turned out to be half the musicians come from all over and come in.
Okay. Is that part of the budget? Do you pay people to come in?
Well, you pay their travel.
Their travel?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. Because you wanted to, so your goal was to keep in mind not only a certain level, but a certain energy, is what exactly. I'm hearing.
That's exactly right. It's a certain vibe to it. Yeah.
And that's so great because you have that flexibility when you create your own orchestra to make that as part of it, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, you do come into problems because we really don't have a music director. So it's not like there's a conductor. We don't have a named conductor. We have some artistic partners, but that makes it hard because I'm oboist and judge and jury, and that makes it weird because but everybody's been so awesome because I'm an incredibly blunt person, so it's just about trying to be a colleague at the same time as still kind of casting your vision for what the group can be, and then slowly as it grows, having other people take their own part of it. I think that's the growth that's there.
What does that mean? How do they get to do that?
You release people into their own creativity and what is their strength, and giving people a chamber concert to program every year, or every other year, and just inviting them into space they've never seen before. Unless you're a professor at a college where you do a recital every year, you don't really do that professionally unless you put it together, you find a place to play, you send your invites to your friends. This is a professionally supported chamber series, for them, and I think it's vital for the kind of hybridness of the organization. So
I think that's fantastic. It makes the members feel, I think, more invested.
I mean, it's turned out to be the thing. Like, we realized that four concerts a year are with all 40 players, chamber orchestra, and then the rest of the 32 concerts are chamber music, and they're not background music, and it's not that, but it's either in collaboration and partnership with unique spaces in Houston, or it's at a space where musicians get to kind of curate their own concerts. So
I see. That's great. And how, I mean, this might seem obvious, but I'd love to hear your point of view. How did it come to you that you were very certain that you wanted a certain kind of person, not just going for the best player necessarily, but also, like you said, someone who would kind of get over themselves or something in those seats? Like, what experiences had you had that made that experience with people who couldn't do that harder to play music with them?
Well, our whole field is supposedly this glorious space of art and creativity and allowing, and instead it's the most judgmental thing there is, and it's a locked up, very judgmental place, and people are not necessarily that nice. And
right.
I think it comes from a sense of fear, and it's Brene Brown's like one of my favorite people, and she talks about vulnerability, and vulnerability is the key to what this is. I invite people to be vulnerable on stage, and with each other, because it's one thing you have to understand and how to play your instrument the best you could play. That's a given, but there's a fine line between judging that and allowing for mistakes because you are trying new things. And so there's a fine line, and it's a very soft skill to try to help people into that, and also be able to speak to people, to be able to talk things out, and to talk to an audience. Everybody has to have that skill, and you have to be able to communicate on a level that's not dumbing it down and talking down to people, but is not highbrow. I mean, some people don't know what the word Mozart is or how to say it, and it's our job to tell them it's Mozart, like pizza. A lot of people say Mozart, and you shouldn't judge them for that. And then don't judge your neighbor just because. Anyway, it can be a very damaging field as far as all that goes, and vulnerability is the very last thing that is valued, but it's the very first thing that should be valued, because that's where all the magic happens.
I love that. That's so great. That's so great. So let's go into how you raise money, because I know the money conversation is really it's kind of awkward, right?
Why?
Isn't it kind of, some people feel that, I don't know.
I'm
sure you don't anymore.
No, I never did. Because
really,
it's not about me. It's not about, it's about growing something for a city, a community, connecting people. It's not about me at all.
That's great.
I have no problem with it at all. I actually find it to be quite fun. You get to a point, like June's the end of our fiscal year, and you get a little stressed about it because you have to ask people a little more aggressively than you would normally. But that's the thing I think that probably 100% of our fields does not understand, is you do not hire a development director. You are the one that asks for money all the time. All the time. 14 years in, I'm sitting here, as you know, when we were getting set up for this call, writing emails asking for money. And you do it in a myriad of ways. You can't just, every person, every foundation, every corporation is different and unique in a relationship. And I think the biggest piece of what ROCO does is building relationships. And our mission of shaping the future of classical music is huge, but it's through energizing, modernizing, and personalizing what we do. And personalizing is the biggest thing. People always ask, oh, why don't you ask them for money? They're wealthy. And I'm like, they're wealthy because they don't give away their money. And so that's actually not sometimes the biggest supporter. You'll be surprised who can support you. And it's just, again, a relationship. And I don't think people understand, if you want to start something, unless you are really willing every single day to talk to people constantly about what you do. And there's still tons of people that don't know what ROCO is in Houston. And ask them, be blunt and ask them for something. I think that's really, even to this day, yes, I hired a development director about 5 years ago, but it's still a lot me individually asking, and which is great. But unless you can do that, you cannot hire someone else to do it, because you're the one with the passion.
Right.
You're the one that can speak it, and you can speak it into someone. And you, again, I say this a lot, casting your vision in front of people, it's pretty huge. I will tell you the book I didn't read it, but I get the gist of it. It's The 7 Faces of Philanthropy. It's a great book about how you have to read people when you have a conversation, just like you do in any, relationship you would have. But what I have only failed at this a few times that I can remember. I'm sure I've failed at it more. But you'll sit across from the table from somebody who's like the CFO of a company, and you're trying to talk to them about donating. And first of all, they won't donate through their foundation. No corporations, unless you are a huge symphony, are going to get donations from big corporations through their foundations. You're going to get it maybe through their marketing, maybe through brand alignment, but not through corporations. So you're going to sit there and talk to this guy who's CFO, and you think, oh my gosh, he wants to know, or she wants to know how good our books are, how good I am at managing money, how good all this is. But you don't realize that their eyes are glazing over because they hear that all day long. The reason they wanted to talk to you is because they used to play flute in the high school band, and they want to hear the music about the music, or they want to hear about what you do for kids or whatever. And you have to learn to read people's interests and take them down that rabbit hole. And then it's a real connection. So that's actually why I find it fun, because it truly is building a relationship and a trust.
That sounds great. Oh, wow. That's such great advice, because a lot of times probably people aren't thinking about the connection and the relationship. They're just thinking, how am I going to get them to do the thing I want, which is to give money, right?
Right. That's right. That's almost like a marital therapy thing too, right? You can't just get somebody to do what you want. You got to know who they are and what they want and like. Yeah, it takes time. It takes a lot of time, and a lot of energy, and the daily energy. And be willing to literally talk to people in elevators. You'd be like, hey, you're just trapped here. Shall we talk about my orchestra? Look, here's my brochure. Would you like to have one? So
tell me about how often you play, because I know it looks
Yeah.
like what you're doing is a full-time job.
Oh, it's beyond full-time job. But no, I do. I play in all the big shows, and then I usually play a chamber, and I do a lot of the salons. And anytime we launch into a whole new what I call connection series, so we have three series. One's the big orchestra concerts. The other is the unchambered, which is every musician gets their own curated concert that they do. And then these connections, which are chamber concerts, kind of in partnership with places or other arts organizations. So Day of the Dead or Peter and the Wolf at the zoo kind of thing. I play in every time we start one of those new series. I play in it because I love kind of that connection of how to show a connection can happen. So I do I do a whole lot of salons and concerts. So yeah, and keeping up with practicing for those things is definitely interesting.
Yeah, and plus you have a family. So
Yeah.
how is that? Do you believe in work-life balance? Or are you just like,
Oh, for sure. No, I do. I mean, I'm very involved in my kids' lives, and now, I mean, one's in college and high school, so it's getting very different. But they
yeah,
still, I mean, actually now is when I see them the most, or try to, because they're just, turned into the people you've grown them into be, and you want to hang with
yeah,
them. But my husband's obviously deeply involved in their lives too, so that's helpful. And my parents live here, or I couldn't have done this. But
that's
at the same
great.
time, I mean, I think as a mom, and I've talked to a lot of other moms, you ruthlessly prioritize, and you wind up realizing, wow, I wasted so much time before. I didn't have to spend 6 hours on that. I could have gotten that done in 2. And look at it, look at that, I did, and I just think you ruthlessly prioritize, and you do have to. I just reread for the third time the book Boundaries, and it's about not just work-life balance, but your own boundaries you need for yourself, and just saying no a lot. I think one of the tenets of ROCO is we say no a lot on purpose. You reject ideas that sound good on paper, but you would like totally draw your mission away from what it is. So that's one of our big things, is say no.
So it sounds like did you write your mission by yourself, or did your musicians write it together with you, or?
No, the board and other people that were involved when we went through that. We always make sure we have stakeholders involved. So musicians, we have a musician on the board, but not just the board. We have musicians, some community people. That was about 6-7 years ago, maybe. I mean, I came up with it the first time myself, opening doors to classical music, and then it was building personal relationships through the language of music or something like that. And now it's shaping the future of classical music through energizing, modernizing, and personalizing the classical experience.
I love that. So
But
can you break that apart,
concert
those three
experience.
words, and tell me what you mean by, like, what things you do to make that come through?
Well, the reason shaping the future of classical music is important is because it doesn't just involve concerts. It involves, I mean, I do a lot of lecturing. I go around and talk around the nation about entrepreneurialism in the arts. But then going into energizing, just the fact that we keep the house lights up during concerts, that we are always just kind of trying to connect with people, and not afraid to use technology, which is the modernizing thing. And then personalizing is everything about what we do, which is the investor model, where it's not about ticket sales. It's about, it's really about investor model, where people donate and they feel ownership of the orchestra, and they have tickets because they donate. So it's a very flipped idea where 10% of our budget is earned income and the rest is all donated. So we're at 1.2 million right now, so we're having to raise at least $1.5 million, not $1.05 million, whatever. So and raise it by donations, period. So it's again just really creating those relationships.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So how has keeping the lights on helped? Is it just more of a connection, like you can see people when you're
Yes.
playing, and it's more of interactive?
Yeah, I like to see the whites of their eyes, just like, because if they're not entertained, you could tell, and there's just a vibrancy to it. Plus, I spend half the concerts I go to, which it's frankly right now not as many as I want, but looking, like, putting the program so where I can read it from the lights from the stage, because I mean, you give people this program you worked on, and then you turn the lights off and they can't read it. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I mean,
That's true.
And then we do a lot of talking during our concerts. Sometimes too much because you can't, control what people say sometimes, which God bless, I try. But yeah, so I just think the house lights up. It feels a little more casual. It feels more connected. And yeah, I feel like the musicians also don't just see this black hole they're playing out to. It becomes personal. You see the same people out there all the time. It makes a very different both sides experience.
Right. That makes sense. And what about the modernizing piece?
Just that we use technology and either through apps or live streaming or,
Oh, cool.
and the fact that we commission every single concert. I mean, we've done 69 world premiere commissions in 13 years, and we have 10 more next year. So it's, and then season 15, we're going to have 15 tiny miniatures plus the 4 and 3 we do. So there'll be 7 plus the 15. Just the idea that it's new, it's who you are, it's what's happening, it's the verbalization of the day in music,
Yeah.
So that's that. And then personalizing, I've already talked about, just that people are connected. The musicians know our donors, the donors know them, the musicians. It's not about one person on the podium being promoted all the time.
Yeah. So I did see one thing on your website that I really love that you do, which is the child care.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so great.
Music education, childcare during and after the concert. We have a 5 o'clock concert on Saturday, which turned out to be a brilliant idea because you can get on with your evening and do other things. But yeah, the kids come to one part of the concert and then they stay till 10:30 for pizza and movies. So parents get a date night after the show. And we also, which I think we're the only orchestra in the nation that does this, we provide childcare for musicians during rehearsals.
Oh, wow. Are you kidding?
No, I'm not. So we have
incredible.
So many little ROCO rooter babies that are, so many people have, we have 5 married couples now in ROCO and babies and everywhere. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean,
it's really fun.
Oh, that's one of the hardest things when couples play in an orchestra together.
Exactly.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I stopped doing as much work with the symphony here, which is why I moved here in the first place. Once we had our daughter, it didn't make a lot of sense for me to go and travel around and pay a babysitter almost the whole amount of money I made per service.
Exactly. That's plus, exactly right.
Yeah, it was so
And we
crazy.
provide it for free.
Wow.
It's provided for free. And it's important too for the people who can continually fly in now because they can bring, I mean, like our cellist and violinist just had a baby and they brought him this last concert because we have childcare. And so it's just makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, otherwise they would have to turn that down. They would have to, yeah.
Take
wow,
turns.
that's amazing.
It seems so simple too. I mean, I think it's hard though because a lot of orchestras don't have the facilities that have a cribs and things like our church already does, obviously.
Right.
So that makes it easy, but I am more than sure that they could find a solution to that. And it's so inexpensive. I mean, it's not inexpensive. You do have to do the licensing and not, but it's worth it. It's just worth it for the dynamic of the organization and the valuing of every human. I think that's, you and I've talked about this before. I mean, I think in our fields, the human is not valued. It's the entity of music around us, which kind of creeps me out a little bit. Yeah. Which is why I don't say I love music. It just sounds so weird. I always talk about it just as a language that is between the humans, So I think if you value all the humans, then the little humans are important too. And so
that is also, so great. Wow, I mean, I'm like blown away. I'm moved right now actually because it's so true. It's like why did we suddenly, as a culture of classical musicians, put this thing that we do on such a high pedestal that it takes away from our lives and our humanity and what we want and what we need for living. You know what I mean? It's up there. Like you give up everything. You give up your I mean, I've seen it. I mean, you and I are probably around the same age. We've seen people's relationships fall apart and all kinds of crazy things happen because it's this almighty thing that you give up everything for, the job, And then once you get in the job, I won't stay on my soapbox too long, but a lot of times you don't really feel like they value you because you're just there to do the job. That's your job, and yourself as a musician does not feed the orchestra's mission statement. It just doesn't. It's so funny. Like whenever I hear a musician complain to me about this or that, I go, just remember that you work for this organization, and go and read their mission statement. It has nothing to do with you and how you feel about the program, right, or how you want to express yourself musically. That's not part of their mission. So no, you just work for this company and they have a different mission, and you're one of the people who does the thing. So it's like it's not integrated. Yeah, there's a disconnect.
But I also have to say that not you, but the person who's in the job signed the contract.
Yes.
And if they didn't read what they signed up for, that's their problem. Just to be totally awful about it. But it's true. And that's fair in every business, and every corporation has their own culture. And you are there for the purpose of the organization and not for your individualism. And so these kind of smaller organizations are really exciting and rife with innovation, and that's what's exciting about it. And the big ones can't do that much. I mean, they almost do too much, trying to be too many things for everybody. And so I think I can understand being in, I tell people when I was teaching, it's like you want to express yourself, you want to learn how to play, and then you get in a job and no, you can't express yourself. But that's the job. And I think people aren't being told, honestly, what they're signing up for.
No, I agree. And how many musicians do you know that have gotten jobs have ever read the mission statement of their orchestra?
No, never.
That's not what you do.
It's not even a piece of it. And so the fact that we have musicians rotating on and off the board here to know kind of how it runs. Now, there always are a handful of people like in the Houston Symphony here who are deeply involved and understand those things, but most of them don't want to be involved. That's not their job. And I really respect that. That's what they signed up for, is to show up and play and do their thing.
Yeah.
But I am not satisfied with that. I love the whole gamut of it. And I love, again, releasing musicians into their own creativity to, if they come to me with an idea for a commission, we'll fund it. That's the idea. It's like everybody gets to solo rotating wise. And when they solo, we offer them money to commission a piece personally for them. And it's just that kind of cool stuff. Like there's one, I commissioned Tony DiLorenzo to do a piece based on the Jabberwocky, which is my favorite poem. And it turned out to be one of the best commissions we've done. We just did our first commercial recording, so it's coming out on a label in September. And it's 6 of our world premiere commissions. I asked the musicians what their favorite pieces were. And so it's a musician's choice CD. And it's going to be really exciting. But like one commission, our trombonist, it was his turn. And I said, do you want to commission? And he said, yes, actually. He commissioned the woman, Dorothy Gates, who does arranging for Salvation Army Band, to write a piece based on Dag Hammerstein, who died in a plane crash. He was the ambassador from Sweden. And so she based the whole piece on DAG, Dag Hammerstein, and it was for trombone. And it's so unusual, but the story, we're actually about to put up a page on our website. You can hear all of our past music for free, by the way. We pay rights for that for the musicians and the publishing companies. But you can hear all of our past concerts. I think it's up to 40 hours of music right now. And we're broadcast on Performance Today pretty regularly. But we're about to have a full page kind of pulled out the commissions so that people can play them themselves and have a repurposed life for these pieces that have been created.
That's incredible. Wow, I'm just really inspired by everything you're doing. So I was going to ask what's next for ROCO, like coming up in the future seasons. How far in advance do you plan?
2 full years now. So next year obviously is done. We just sent the brochures out, and then season 15 is started, and then I have one idea for 16, but not yet. We're starting to commission a lot further out, obviously, for some bigger names, but we have some big names that have written for us. So yeah, this next season, I know there's no video, but it's games people play. So it's all the different games. And so the whole season is based on gaming. And the first concert is based on a chess match, famous one, that Deep Blue, Kasparov played Deep Blue and was not happy with the outcome. And so it was the computer, back in the day when they had the first computer chess thing. And so I asked Maxime Goulet, who's a gaming composer who wrote World of Warcraft, I think, music for that, to write this piece. And then we hired an animation company to animate the actual chess match. So it'll be this really cool. The orchestra will be the centerpiece, but right above us and behind us will be the actual game being played. So
Wow.
yeah, it'll be really fun. And then I don't quite know how it's going to work out. We're working on all the logistics. But did you ever read those books, Choosing Your Own Adventure, when you were younger?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And I love sci-fi and stuff like that. But so this composer is writing a piece for flugelhorn and marimba. So it's our trumpeter, Joe Foley, who is doing his Unchambered and got to curate that. And it's this piece where the audience will be voting on the direction of the piece in real time. And so they'll play it like 3 times because each time it'll be a different experience. So we're kind of figuring out the logistics of that right now.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how that would go, but that sounds really cool.
It's going to be fun. So yeah, and again, I mean, it can't totally get in the way of the music. I don't want to do technology or innovation just to do it, but it's fun to experiment. And, all the different ways that we can do that is exciting. So
that sounds great.
Yeah, thanks. And so yeah, the future is our CD's released in September. So buy the CD and have fun with that. And
I'll make sure that I'll get a link for you or something to put into the, can people pre-order it or?
Oh, nice idea. That's such a good idea. Sure.
Yes, they can.
We don't have a title for it yet, so it should be in a few weeks. So just go to the ROCO.org website. It'll all be on the front page.
Okay, awesome. So I have one more question for you.
Sure.
Who in the classical world are you inspired by?
I saw that question. It's really interesting. I know this is a cheesy cop-out of a way to say this, but honestly, the people who listen to our music, the people that are in the audience, there's not a bigger high for me than to connect with an audience. And I have to say, I like to do it verbally first. I like to kind of tell a joke and make them uncomfortable and and then connect in a way that they're not expecting and then play the music because just to make it personal again, you can't be too personal when you're playing an instrument, especially, how we look when we play the oboe. It looks horrific. So no one wants to get to know you when you look like that. But I think that the people who inspire me the most are the people who receive what we do. That's it. Because when they can open up and receive it and they weren't expecting to, I love to relight the pilot light in adults. That's my passion. And I just think that's the coolest thing ever. I mean, there's a ton of people doing amazing things across the world and the nation. But singling people out, I don't know, there's a whole wave of us out there, as you included, and just that's what's exciting, is being on that wave. But we can play for each other, and that's disgustingly narcissistic. And so I have to say that they have to complete you. I mean, it's like that, you complete me, but it's true. The audience completes you. And I just, that's what gets me happy, is meeting Mrs. Smith over the apples in this grocery store and her being just so delighted and passionately delighted, not like, oh, that was a lovely concert, but like, oh my gosh, whoa, that was the freakiest piece, and I can't believe I sat there, but it was really important to have witnessed that. And then, wow, the next one you played was beautiful, and wow, she's not dead either, she's a living composer, what the heck? And just all these kind of almost converts. It's an evangelism thing. I mean, it is for me. And that's the greatest thing, I guess. That's it, is converting people in the audience. That's my favorite thing, and that's who I am inspired by the most, is that next convert.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. I have so much enjoyed this conversation, and I am super inspired, so much inspired. And I just have to say, I want to give a shout out to you just because women founders, let's just say that's awesome, because there needs to be more. And I just love what you're doing. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge
live stream
fan.
us. You can live stream us around the world on our concerts on the Saturday nights, anywhere.
That's so fantastic.
And this next November, we're doing an all-female concert. Actually, every concert we have a female composer on every single concert. But next year, this one concert is all female composers, 2 dead, 2 living. I figure equal rights. But a female conductor, and we're going to do the night before the concert samplings of the pieces, but a concert and conversation, women in the arts panel with a partial concert stuff. So
will that be live streamed too, that part?
You know what? It's at Match. I'm glad you asked that. I don't know, but the concert itself, November, will be. So all those concerts are live streamed, or you can hear music. Accessibility, baby.
Yeah, I love it because people are streaming now. I mean, I love records and CDs, but like currently I have no CD player in my house,
Right, exactly.
so I
It's
stream,
true.
you
Yeah,
know.
totally.
Yeah,
That's
so I
great.
think it's great that you guys are on the next level and making your music available to everybody, even if they're not in Houston. That's so crucial. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have some random people in Finland watching us. I don't know. It's awesome. Hey, we could go into the universe. We could be in the sky. Anyway, well, thanks so much for
Thank
having me
you.
on,
Thank you
and
so
good luck.
much.
Yay. Okay,
Thanks. Bye bye.
bye.